Now, as you indicate, one of the problems that we have is the public's understanding of blindness, and certainly your examples of living in the community and the kinds of contributions you can make to the community is important. Do you also do outreach to the National Federation of the Blind, to the sighted community with presentations, talks, programs? Do you do that sort of thing?
Absolutely. So everything from, so during the month of October, we focus specific programs in the community, which we call Meet the Blind Month, where we're out in the community. You know, John and I have talked here to a Reston Boy Scout troop probably 2 years ago. We're in school groups talking about Braille, trying to teach how blind people travel, and to show that they're just members of the community who use a set of alternative techniques. We do a lot of outreach to seniors. John, I think you recently did a transportation fair for people as well, trying to share details about transportation options for blind people and for people struggling with how do they use alternative approach. You want to tell us about that?
Sure. Yeah, the Fairfax chapter of the National Federation of the Blind, which meets the third Thursday of the month in Fairfax City, we in January had a program, several hours, and it was really resonated with the blindness community. We've talked about employment, we've talked about literacy. Well, having a job is great, but how do you get there if you're blind and you don't drive? Now, for every area, transportation is always a challenge, and it's, even though we have some of the best public transportation in Northern Virginia, it still can be a great challenge. So we invited many of our we are the clients, many of the service providers from Metro, and we met and we had the best exchange where people could ask one-on-one with the transportation providers, how do I do this? How do we arrange this? And it's something every time we have an event like this, we had one on employment, we have had one on transportation, we had one just on general resources in the community. Those with diabetes have eye problems, just those who are aging have vision problems. It's like, I didn't know there was out there. Right. And it's one of our biggest services I think we do to the community. And we're not a government agency. Right. We don't get any government money. We're a nonprofit. And is just getting the word out there, and when people discover these resources that they didn't know were there, it's really great, especially with parents with children. They have so many normal frustrations of being a parent, but then to have a child with a disability and wondering about the future. I had a parent say to me once, just in it, what will happen to my son when I die? Sure. A parent really shouldn't have to worry about, especially about blindness. Right. There's so many alternatives.
Now, speaking of alternatives, you have a technology example with you today. Can you tell us a little bit about what that machine is that you have?
Well, this is basically a PDA, a computer for the blind. Okay. And this is basically a very specialized piece of equipment. Okay. Because I work in the computer industry, I work for a company, and I help develop software tools for the war against terror. Okay. So I have to be very technologically with it, and have lots of books with me, and do research and all that. So I have this very specialized piece of equipment, which is designed specifically for blind people. Now you notice this is the keyboard. It's laid out like Perkins Braille. You may have heard of one of those. Right. It's actually a Braille typewriter. Well, it's the way the keyboards are laid out. For example, this is the letter A, this is the letter B. What makes this very special is on the very bottom it has something called a refreshable Braille display. It literally, as you move from line to line or page to page, the dots change. Okay. And you're able to read silently. I learned Braille when I was 40, and I'm still never proficient enough. Sure. But Braille for pleasure reading or reading to my children is very nice.
And so you actually read across the bottom of that by the Braille indicators.
Yes. If turning it on, I don't need to turn it on, but basically is by taking your finger and running your finger across it as it's little pins that move up and down. Sure. As the pins move across your finger, you after you've learned the Braille code, you get proficient enough that all of a sudden, like reading, when you look at a word, you don't go, that's the letter E, this is the word. It comes to you. And when you really reach proficiency, that's when Braille is just like reading. And it really was a pleasure to be able to actually read something without having to struggle to see it.
You talked about your work with sighted community and having them develop an understanding of blindness and so on. Do you also have support groups and so on for members of the blind community?
Absolutely. So the Potomac chapter, which covers Arlington, Alexandria, and Falls Church, is the chapter I run. We meet on the second Thursday of every month in Arlington, Virginia, just 2 blocks from the Virginia Square Metro station on Metro's Orange Line. Sure. In those meetings, we include, as well in the Fairfax chapter meetings, we include a discussion of NFB philosophy, trying to work on that positive perception of blindness, working to support our members. This past weekend, we held a cooking class where we had 12 people working on how to use alternative blindness techniques for cooking meals, learning from each other to learn what are the capabilities and what are the skills and approaches we use to host a dinner for others and make meals, whether it's using Braille or technologies for reading a cookbook to alternative means by which to tell whether the chicken's done and talking timers and other things. Just a fun time. But in addition, it also just builds community. In the process, we had a lot of laughs and a good time.
Sure. And Tracy, we're going to have to leave it there because as educational as your discussion has been, our time has arrived. So we want to thank you for being with us, Tracy and John both. The National Federation of the Blind program has been very educational to me, and I know for our viewers as well, so thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. www.nfbv.org. There
you go. He took the words right out of my mouth. NFBV, National Federation of the Blind, Virginia.org. Thank you for being with us on Virginia Report tonight, and I hope you'll join us next week at the same time. This is Dr. Ken Plumb. Good night.